All right, thank you everyone for joining us today on another session of Lens with Advanced Design. I'm Hector Silva, and today our next guest is Sam Gwilt, an industrial designer with an eclectic mix of skills. He graduated from Brunel University, London, and worked for Paul Coxedge Studio, specializing in bespoke lighting installations and exhibitions internationally. After 2 years at Precipice Design, working with clients such as Braun, he now works at a design consultancy, Layer. Sam also runs an Instagram and YouTube channel, Sam Does Design, where he shares industry tips with the design community. For those who are tuning in, I advise you to ask questions in the Q&A section of this webinar. I'm going to give the floor over to Sam now. Sam, thank you so much for being here, and super excited to chat afterwards.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. After seeing so many Lens sessions, it's weird that I'm now here giving a talk. So yeah, let's crack on.
Fantastic. Let me
I
just
can't.
make you a host, and then we will go from there.
Cool. Yeah, I am host now. Oh, of course, I have to open preferences. I've never had to open preferences before. I've just got new. I think I may have to quit Zoom to allow screen recording, and then I'll be back in. Is that okay?
Sounds good. If you want to just follow the link that I sent you. Meanwhile, I will be tap dancing for everyone else.
Cool.
All right. I guess it's just me. Welcome to another session of Lens with Advanced Design. Today's guest is Hector Silva. I'm just kidding. As we wait for Sam to come back on, I do want to tell you that we do have an after Lens, so please join us after this session to generate community and questions with those who are attending. And it looks like Sam is back, and let me just give him host privileges, and there you go.
Cool.
Perfect. You are good to go.
Amazing. There's always something, isn't there? Let's just close all of this down. We've already been through this. Okay, I think that's still going because I already...
We can see you.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Okay, there's always something, but that's what happens in these live talks. That's cool. So, Seeing is Designing, that's the name of the talk for today. And when I was writing this talk, it almost became apparent that I'm going to talk about something that's really 3 mini lectures in one. Hopefully it's still going to take about 20 minutes, and then we can get to some questions at the end. I always prefer to open it up to questions at the end, but I'm going to talk about one thing that is on the micro scale and one thing that is on the macro scale. So something that's like really closely zoomed in, and then something that's really broad and quite vague in the end as well. But first things first, who am I? I am Sam. I was born and raised in a place called Telford, Shropshire, and we are famous, I guess famous, locally famous for building the world's first bridge made of iron. And that place is now called Iron Bridge. So locally, we're known as the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. That bridge was built in 1777. So I think it's like a similar sort of age to America. But basically, it's almost like they built that bridge and then called it quits because it stayed a very sleepy village in a very rural area. So that's the claim to fame that that area has. And that's where I'm from. I then went to Brunel University in London, moved to London to go to university. And the lecture center that you can see here, this is an image that I just grabbed from Google, was actually used as the location for the government hospital in A Clockwork Orange. And it's a very imposing building with that brutalist architecture as well. Then I went on to work at Paul Coxedge Studio, and I was an intern there for about 8 months in 2015. I got to work on some great projects, and yeah, it was bespoke lighting stuff, gallery exhibitions, like more art than design, I would argue. But there's me after doing an installation in Seoul in South Korea. Yeah, it was really fun working there. And then in 2016, I interned at Precipice Design. And the way that it works at Brunel University is you do 2 years of university, and you go off and do a placement year, an industry year, and then come back to university to complete the degree. So I was at Precipice Design for that internship year. I did 6 months there. And then I went back to university, and they offered me back as a full-time employee after that. And it's a strategic design consultancy. So we were lucky enough to work on the reintroduction of the Braun audio speakers, along with all the marketing assets and branding the company essentially after being away from that industry for about 40 years. So that was really exciting. Also, I've done my own stuff. I have worked with Gantry to design the weight lights that came out in 2019. And that's really quite a proud moment for me because that is the first design to come with designed by Sam Gwilt on the box. So that was really nice. And I've still kept that box, obviously, when I got my first product from them. And then I enjoyed working with them so much. I am bringing out another light with them, hopefully by the end of this year. But as we all know, this year is up in arms at the moment. So fingers crossed that we can get that out by the end of the year. And then now currently I work at Layer Design. It's a very strange time to have started at a company. I started late January or early February, I think. And yeah, then I went away for 4 months while obviously lockdown happened. And then I'm back now. So that's all good and up and running again. But it's been a very strange time to start at a new company. So key highlights of what I've done so far. I've worked on the return of Braun Audio as a speaker brand. I had a chat with Dieter Rams, and the Zoom is hiding me. I feel like Mike Wazowski being hidden by the Zoom, but I am in that photo as well. I was then invited by Mark Adams because I made a nice video about meeting Dieter Rams. I was invited by Mark Adams, the managing director of Vitsu, to the Vitsu headquarters, and I got a tour by himself. I designed the light with Gantry. I started making money online, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later on. That's through the Sam Does Design Instagram and YouTube channel. And I started working at Layer. That's pretty much the whole career path in a nutshell so far. But I didn't get to do those highlights overnight. You know, if someone spoke to me and said, you know, you're going to meet Dieter Rams, you're going to work at Layer, a place that I've highly regarded for a very long time. I don't think I would have believed them when I was just starting at university. And it definitely didn't look like this image here, where it's 2020 and then a really steep curve to get to where I am right now. It has not been like that whatsoever. It's actually been more like this. So I started my design career in 2014. Working on a few freelance things, a couple of places here and there, nothing too much. It was while I was still at university. And in 2016, I decided to start using Instagram to post sketches and to try and ask the community how I can improve, because I definitely needed to improve. And in 2017, a company, a small company called Advanced Design Sketching, asked me to make a video because they had seen people online on social media talking about sketching and sketching and what it means to be a sketcher as a designer. And I was luckily asked to make a video for them, which it feels like it's come full circle again. But that mindset of making that video changed the way that I thought about social media and design. Up until that point, I was very much focused on the grades that I was getting. I was focused on the coursework that I was doing. And I had to take time out of doing that coursework and preparing for exams and stuff to make that video. And that was a conscious decision to change my mindset from something like university, which has a definite ending point, and moving towards looking looking towards the future and what comes after university, and being able to leverage that. So as I started Instagram and beyond after 2017, it actually really helped my career prospects as well. And it's almost like you can have a linear flow between being asked to make that video by advanced design sketching, as it was, and then literally moving forward, and then each thing leads to the next, and it snowballs into being able to meet with DCRAMs or working at layer, and it all comes from, I think, posting that original video. So that's been a little bit about me and where I am now, and how changing perceptions of what you're working on between either being at university and focusing on things in your immediate future, and then maybe branching out and looking what comes in the next year, what comes in the year after that, and then hopefully building and snowballing on that as well. So this next section, like I said, it's 3 sections of this webinar. That was the first section. This section now is all about seeing objects. And I think that seeing things, you can't design something before you can see it. And when I start to talk about the perceptions that we have, you can't understand these certain things before knowing what to look out for, right? So you can't see something without knowing what to look out for. And what I want to talk about is optics and the way that our perception changes based on optics. So the millimeter of a lens on a camera, let's get technical for a little bit, is it doesn't mean the zoom. So if you go to buy a camera and it says this is an 80 millimeters zoom lens, it's not actually talking about how much it zooms in, but zoom is like a byproduct of that, okay? It's actually talking about the angle of which the image goes into that lens. And you can see that by, I've got a little drawing of a camera in the middle here. And also on the right-hand side is going to be the effect of different millimeter lenses on a Rubik's Cube with a perspective grid on the floor. So 11 millimeter lens is 180 degrees. And if everyone can see my mouse, that's this one down here. So anything at 11 millimeters is going to be 180 degrees. And you might imagine that as a fisheye lens. If you imagine those skateboarding videos with everyone looking like, crazy warped people, that's pretty much what fisheye does. And then as you move forward and you move up to something like 900 millimeter lens, it's going to zoom in really far. And then you can start to see like the moon, like really up close. But that is only a 3-degree difference in perspective there. So humans see around 35 to 50 millimeters. And this one, I think, was a 25 millimeter in key shot. And this one is 100 millimeters in key shot. So what I want to point out is that perspective, and when people start to learn to draw, or when people start to design products, perspective is not it's not a constant. And I think that trips people up. From what I've seen online, knowing that perspective is different depending on the viewer is quite important when you start to sketch, when you're starting as a designer, and when you start to design products. So perception of objects is also quite important as a 3D physical product designer. And that's why we need to have models, and why we need to see things in the real world, because rotating around a product in CAD is never the same thing as actually seeing it in the real world. So the way that we do this is, as humans and as people, is we use 2 eyes to tell the difference between one space and another space. It's 2 inputs, exactly the same as 3D glasses work, 2 inputs that merge into one, and the brain is merging those inputs. So whether that's judging depth, or judging 3-dimensional objects like the one on the left, or judging depth and how far something away is on the right, that's how humans tend to see. This is me. and I'm going to talk about alignment with eyes, because I haven't really spoken about this at all online, actually. This is me in hospital in 2017, because since I was born, my eyes have not been aligned with each other. When I was born, my eyes pointed inwards, and I had an operation when I was 10 to fix that. Then my eyes drifted out when I was around 20, and I had an operation to fix that. I won't go into the details of the operation because it's not nice, and people tend to wince when I go through that. But the image here on the left is like the before, and I guess the image on the right is just after, as I was leaving the hospital. But when I want to talk about this is because I, as a designer, as a physical product 3D designer, I don't see in 3 dimensions. Only one of my eyes works. The other one, my brain ignores. And because my brain ignores it, it doesn't have anything to focus on, and it tends to wander, and it points in different directions. So I've had the 2 operations so far to fix that and to bring it back into alignment. But because it's still not focusing on anything, because we can't fix how the brain responds to it, it just ignores the input. Over the next 5 to 10 years, my eye is going to wander back out again. And it gets to the point where potentially I may need to wear an eye patch in the future. I'm going to absolutely rock it, and that's going to be my look, and I'm actually quite looking forward to that. But as soon as I put an eye patch on, then it's got even less to focus on, and it's going to wander even more. So I'm going to put that off for as long as I can. Anyway, the whole point of this is to say that this potentially is what the majority of people may see if they're out and about. You know, they see a person. I've chosen Dieter. Why not? This is what people see. But this is what I see, because the eye alignment issue is there. The my brain then takes in some of the input of my bad eye, but not all of it, but it's still misaligned. So that's why I see a ghost of everybody at all times. It works mostly on people's faces. I think human brains pick up on human faces, so it doesn't necessarily happen so often with objects. But if I let my eyes like unfocus for a little bit, then I can see it on absolutely everything. So this is how I see the world, and I was photoshopping this today just to show how I see it. And when I was photoshopping this to show how I see the world, then there was 4 Dieter Ramses, because there's already 2 of them there. So yeah, that's how I see it. But what I'm trying to say with all of this is that perception of the world and everybody's perception of the world is different. We're all sharing the same reality, but everybody's perception of that reality is different. And that's quite interesting as designers when we get asked to design for a specific market or a specific user, that we can draw elements from these large bodies of people. Like, let's say we want to design for Generation Z, Generation Z. We can generalize that demographic, but we cannot design for the individuals in that demographic. And it's difficult to be able to do that. But what I'm trying to say with this is, because I am a 3D industrial designer and I can't see in 3D because of my eyesight, it actually really helps me out when I start to sketch, when I start to make 3D renderings, because everything is already 2D, and I just put what if I'm sketching something that exists, or I'm tweaking something or redesigning something, I can literally just put that thing that I can see in front of me and put it on the paper. And there's no need to worry about 2 eyes looking at it. No need to worry about different perspectives. It actually helps me quite a lot as a designer. So I just wanted to show everybody that, just to show that perceptions can be a little bit different. and it's both on an individual level and on a global level as well. If you talk about different markets and stuff like that. Okay, so that was all about the micro seeing design, seeing objects. I think I wanted to talk about that a little bit because of my eyesight, and I wanted to be clear about my eyesight, but also because perspective is obviously one of the first things that trips everybody up when they start to sketch. So I just wanted to point out that if anybody is out there struggling with sketching, it's okay. It's not your fault. It's because perspective and perception is not a constant, and understanding that is really going to help. This next section is seeing things on a large scale. So seeing things on a global market, really zooming out of the whole design industry and looking at everything at once. What I'm going to talk about is called meaning-centered design. And we did that while I worked at Precipice Design, like we spoke about before. Precipice Design has actually just rebranded and become Recipe Design. That's another thing altogether. But they still use this technique, and it's a great technique. I don't use it so much now that I'm working at Layer, but on my individual projects, like the gantry lights and stuff like that, I still use this. So what does this say? This is an easy thing. Normally I'd like, maybe in the Q&A, everyone's gonna like pop the answer in. So it says dog, right? We can read that, and it says dog. What does this say? Because there's no words at this point. It doesn't say anything, but it reads as dog. So we've gone from reading a word and understanding it to looking at a symbol and understanding it as well without any words whatsoever. So that says dog. So the way that we navigate the world is by looking at symbols and looking at signs. And it's almost like another language, right? It's called semiotics. It's the study of how symbols and signs have meanings, and you can read and gather meaning from those symbols without ever having a word said about it, right? The same thing goes for physical designs. And not many people understand that. And a lot of the time, you need to learn to read design before you can start writing design. And that goes for words, symbols, and 3D objects as well. So these are some things that we agree on, right? Words have meaning. We've established that we all pictured a dog when that word came up. Time moves forward, and money has value. Right? They are things that we as a society believe is true. But they're only real because we as a society collectively say so. And so much to the point that on English money, on British money, on pound sterling, it says on the notes, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of whatever the note is. In this case, £20. Now, what that means is that particular note, that particular monetary piece of paper is not £20. But if you took that to the bank and said, can I have £20? In the olden days, when it was first, when money was first a thing, the bank would then give you that exact value of money in sterling silver. That's why it's called British pound sterling. So now that we got to the point where it's not linked to silver anymore, but the money still says this is worth £20 because everybody just agrees it is, and we have to move forward. The same thing goes for products and meaning as well, and we're going to come on to that in a minute. So this is the beginnings of the graph that will help us understand the meanings of products in everyday life. So something can either be A or something can either be B. They are polar opposites, right? So you'd be forgiven for thinking that anything in between is going to go on that line. And that's all there is to it because one is opposite to the other. And we can look at that by saying something like alive or dead. And there surely can't be anything other than that. Those are the two polar opposites. That is exactly, it's either one or the other. And anything that may be in between is going to go on that line. But what we can actually do is extend that graph, okay? We can extend that graph with diagonals coming from either one. And again, I'm just covering I don't know if I can move that. I can. Let's put this up here. I don't know if that's changed it for anyone else, but that's moved it for me. So we have alive and we have dead, and we can move that graph to be not alive, and it goes diagonally, and not dead, and that goes diagonally as well. So all of a sudden, we can have other options. And in this case, in this scenario, it's alive, dead, zombie, and vampire. Now, the reason for that is that, and I know this is really not talking about design at the moment. I promise we're going to talk about design again. I'm going to bring it back around. But this is the way that tends to get people to understand this. A vampire is living, but is not alive, and a zombie is undead. So that's like the easiest way to think about all this. And now we've got this space, this map, this square that we can start to put in different designs and to populate. It's literally a map by this point, okay? So that's how I get people to understand that things on the left are polar opposites to things on the right, but diagonally, they are complementary to each other, okay? So with that being said, and a little fun diagram of zombies and vampires, we can actually put in the psychological, real world semiotics names that real semioticians use. And this is me, by the way, trying to describe something that psychologists and semioticians at Precipice spent their lifetime doing. And this is just what I've grabbed as a designer and ran with it. So I'm trying to put this into designers' terms so we can all use it as designers. Okay, so on the top left, we have practical, which is the trustworthy, practical values of design. The polar opposite of that is the utopian values. So that's the homely vibe. And one is trustworthy, and then as you move across to utopian, it becomes a little bit more fluffy, a little bit less trustworthy, but it's soft and it's welcoming. The opposite to utopian is critical. So that's the really factual, the bare facts, nothing but the facts. Engineers love that section, nothing but the facts. That's all there is. And then ludic, playful, is the polar opposite of practical and trustworthy. So ludic is the really playful, crazy designs that become like pop art and playful, okay? Now, I'm going to use toothbrushes as an example to how a semiotic map works and how we can plot different designs on the map and analyze the market to produce the designs that we want to, okay? So this is a good example of showing different styles of toothbrushes and how it relates to the market as a whole. Okay, so practical is the trustworthy one. Okay, so it's the science, but it's like smooth and sleek. I think that's the Philips toothbrush over there. It's high tech and it's trustworthy. You know, you trust it because it's sciencey and it's going to do the thing that it says it is. Utopian is the homely one where it becomes a little bit more lifestyle. The toothbrush here is a really minimal, lifestyle-driven, simple materials, but you maybe not trust it as much as you do with the electric toothbrush on the left, okay? Critical is the polar opposite. In this instance, in this scenario, critical almost becomes like, there may already be an issue, this is what you need to fix it, okay? So it's not reassuring and it's not trustworthy, but it's like, it's almost panicking and almost worrying in this sense with the critical section. And then the ludic is the polar opposite of practical. and that is playful. And obviously with this shape, this crazy shape that is the bottom, and the colorway, that is obviously the most playful one. And the benefit of this map is that you can use it for all aspects of design, whether it's color, usage, packaging, all of those touch points can fall into this map. So once we have the polar opposites of everything, then we can start to populate that map with the different designs. Okay, so you can find clusters and find different spaces that the markets and the industries have tended to fall in so far. And once you have that, this is me very fast doing this. While I was working at Precipice, which is now Recipe Design, I called them the war rooms, because there was just huge walls filled with these maps, with tiny tiny little printouts of each of the products and how they fit into the whole thing. Like, hundreds of these, if we were doing toothbrushes, hundreds of the best-selling toothbrushes and where it fits in. And you can really start to see the clusters of the market and how people perceive different things, and how people will go for different areas based on their current scenario. Okay, but not only that, but you can then start to see the areas that there is nothing so far, and then you can start to really think about, okay, well, what will that space look like? What if it was mostly trustworthy with a little bit of utopian values and homely values that doesn't take it too far, so the trustworthiness gets taken out of it? It's pushing and pulling different values to get to new spaces and recreate market, essentially. And by this point, whenever I try and explain these semiotic maps to people, they say, well, why not just use an X and Y graph? Designers love using X and Y graphs. It's potentially a lot easier to understand. And part of the reason is that an X and Y graph, you can say, okay, size and cost could be the X and the Y values, but they are not intrinsically linked together at all. Like, they are not, they don't influence each other most of the time. So it's just design. It's picking, not maybe random, but different X and Y values. And it's just not as valuable as having this this map that shows you the whole extent of everything, because each of the four corners are intrinsically linked to each other and inform the other one. If you move from one, you take values away from the other, and vice versa if you go up and down as well. So yeah, why not X and Y? Because the axes, they could be anything, and it just, I think personally, devalues the integrity of the research that you're doing if you just plucked, okay, let's do cost and let's do color, let's do size and let's do weight. They're arbitrary sometimes, arbitrary values on the X and Y. But what you can do is then go back in, once you have your semiotic graph with the practical, utopian, critical, and ludic, you can go back in and you can see where your designs fit in that market. And I've placed my designs that I've got out here. These are the designs that I own to my name. And you can see that the glasses that I made with Bantam Frameworks, they're a very traditional shape, and it straddles the difference between practical, which is the trustworthy one, because it's that traditional shape, but maybe more utopian materials. It's got the metal arms, it's got the signature on there that makes it a little bit more homely. So that's right in the middle. The clay, the mug that I made, I've just posted that on Instagram actually. That's a mug that I made at a Christmas party last year, but that is so utopian. It's the homely one, it's the handmade. It's just really pushed up into that corner. And then the two gantry lights that I've spoken about already. Weight, which was the first one, is the most playful. It's a sphere, a ball of light that has fallen on the base and deformed the base, right? So that's really pushed down to the ludic side, because it's like a postmodern pop art, playful design. Whereas Encore, the one that's coming out at the end of the year, is slightly more refined, slightly more restrained, potentially a little bit more elegant than Weight, and that pushes it up to the utopian and ever so slightly towards the practical as well. And once you can understand that as a designer, it's not all about being in one spot all of the time. I mean, granted, for me, I have been pushed all the way to one side, purely down to preference. But if we go back to the market, the full market, you can see that as a designer, it's not just about having one style of design, and especially as someone working in a consultancy where you may work with completely different brands in different markets. It's all about having the right style of design to pinpoint that exact area of the market that you need to go into. So yeah, it's really important to be able to move between different design styles, to be able to portray the exact style of design that would fit that market in the best way. Because let's say, for example, that if any of these designs went even more playful and even more off, these maps are pretty interchangeable, and we even have instances where it falls off a map, like it can go completely too far. Nobody would buy it because it's not going to be trustworthy. It's going to be too playful. It's going to be silly, and it's understanding the mindset behind those designs that's really going to help as well. Moving forward again, I went back a little bit there, and just this last image, because not only does a design have a meaning and have its own space in the market, but even the way that you portray it can as well. So on the left, this is the new gantry light that I was talking about. It's a very dramatic, almost playful image, whereas on the right, it's more practical and potentially utopian as well. And it's really going to depend on what type of impact you want for the type of style of image that you go for as well. So all that is to say that everything can be plotted on a map like that. So in summary, I feel like this has been an absolute shotgun of a presentation about lots of different things, but it's all, I think, or I hope, linked through the idea of seeing the world and the perception of the world as a designer. So there is a lot more to seeing than meets the eye. When we spoke about perspective not being constant, or pinpointing different things in the design marketplace, there's a lot to it. It's not just what meets the eye. Seeing beyond the task at hand can help you set up for future opportunities. So that was all about how my mindset changed when I was asked to make that video, and then the social media elements helped bolster my career prospects as well. Understanding how perception works can help you with sketching and other micro tasks. So that even helps with things like rendering and surfacing a product if you're surfacing a design detail, for example. And understanding how people may perceive your designs should influence your process as well. And the whole idea of people's perceptions of products are going to change based on the style of product that you make as well. So that has been the talk. I think what we're going to do now is open up some questions. And I hope it's been a semi-coherent talk about seeing the world and perceiving the world. Maybe it's been 3 separate, completely different lectures, or maybe it's been one semi-coherent one. I hope it's been a coherent one. But yeah, let's look at some questions if there are any out there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Sam. That was fantastic. We do have some questions here, and a lot of these questions might not relate to some of the things you presented, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll make sure that we circle back to your presentation. But to kick things off, it's 2020. We're in a very weird time right now. As a young designer, what is an advice that you have for 2020 grad industrial designers?
Yeah, I mean, as a recent graduate, um, it's tough um, to pop out into the world of design like right now. I think is tough, but um, places are still hiring. I think Layers has taken on some interns. I know that much, but uh, it's a time potentially to focus on your own thing and focus on making your own opportunities. Like I was talking about, how social media helps with opportunities for me in the future. Um, Trying to work on creating opportunities for yourself. I think this generation is going to be really strong at making jobs for themselves. So yeah, all the best to everybody that is graduating right now. My heart goes out to you, but I fully believe that you absolutely have this, and yeah, go for it.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Find a place and make yourself an opportunity if you can't find any. So, very great. Um, we do have a question here regarding your presentation, actually, a couple. This is a question that's asked by Wyatt, and he wants to know if you intentionally targeted a semiotic bracket with both your gantry lights, and was this part of the job or a choice that you made?
Um, I think while I was designing, specifically the weight light, the first one, I knew I always wanted it to be a little bit playful, a little bit fun, not take itself too seriously. I didn't want to be, I didn't want my first design to come out of the gate and be like really pretentious and really like, oh, look at me. I wanted it to be like this fun thing that didn't take itself too seriously. So already it's like in that ludic space. Um, yeah, and then it was a conscious decision for me for the next one. I mean, it wasn't part of the process for gantry. Like they have a pretty prescriptive process that almost like check boxes that they make designers fill in to make sure they're designing the right thing and it's going to hit um, the right target audience. But for me personally, like I said, I use it in my own work, and I think that the second one, the encore light, I absolutely wanted to go for a more elegant, utopian, take itself a little bit more seriously design. So yeah, that was a conscious decision for me, but it wasn't a criteria from Gantry themselves.
To piggyback off that answer, um, here's a question that is asked by Mao, and his question was: are your designs on the semiotic square, are they permanent, or can they change positions over time?
That's a good question. Um, and I think because the designs that I've worked on are very much like they are an entity in their own right. Like the light is the light. That's all it is. Whereas if you start looking at larger aspects of design, where it's maybe a more complicated product, where it's a product, an interface, a service design, the marketing collateral that goes around it, different elements with different campaigns and things may change um, where it sits on that map. Um, and other things might come out in the marketplace that completely, if it's pushed right up into the utopian space, and then something else that comes out is even more utopian and more homely and soft, then it might push it further in. But it's all relative. It's a human sciences are never concrete. It always changes.
Do you think that I mean, we talked about 2020 and recent graduates looking for work. Um, is London a good place for industrial designers to work wise?
I think so. I mean, I've only ever worked in London myself. Um, the UK has quite a lot of good places in London. There's a cluster of design consultancies in Oxford, I think, and even down towards Bristol and places like that. And, I think that the UK is quite a design forward thinking country. Um, Especially for consultancies. There are so many consultancies that I can think of that are based in London and beyond. So for me, I'd love to work elsewhere if I get the chance. I don't want to stay in one place all the time, but so far for me, it's been good.
Do you ever want to work in the US?
I've thought about stuff like that. It's a big move. I think if that was to happen, it would need to happen like right now. I've got a long-term girlfriend. She's settled in her job. Like it's a big move. But if the right opportunity came up, then absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of logistics when you have other people, involved, a lot other stakeholders. So I
Mhm.
agree with you. Here is a question. Should we tailor our portfolio and design products according to the company we want to work in, or stick with the academic projects?
That's a good question, and I think there's always a fine line. Like you never want to pretend to have designed something for that company. I don't think personally. As a student or as a recent grad, you will always miss specific details that make their products. They spend years or with a whole team, so inevitably you're going to miss specific details that make their designs really good. But what I would say, so don't like design something and then stick their label on it. Don't stick their logo on it. But what I would say is to design things that are similar to their market. And I always advocate for you need to show companies that you are already doing the work that they need help with. So it's about tailoring your portfolio and putting in those extra passion projects that correspond to that market specifically. Yeah.
Absolutely. And along with that question of portfolios, do you think that, well, here's to kind of switch things up. Here's a question that's asked by Aguras, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Is it wrong to be a perfectionist as an industrial designer? I usually pay a lot of attention to details, and some say it's wrong, but I would like to hear your opinion based on your experience.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that a lot of people struggle with that, and I think the whole industry, the way that I say it is like a project is never finished. The deadline just arrives. Um, and there's one of my design teachers used to say, and it's something that stuck with me a long time, is designers strive for perfection, safe in the knowledge that it is unattainable. And what that means is like if anything could be perfect, we'd be out of a job, right? Because we design it, it's perfect, and then never needs to be redesigned. Um, so absolutely go for as many details as you can and make it as good as you can. But remember that your time is money. Design is about meeting the deadline and making things as cheaply as possible as well, and fits in with the whole economy of design. But yeah, absolutely go for as many, nail as many details as you can with a vision to look forward to version 2 in the future.
Now, when you talk about creating opportunities, for the students who might not be able to look for jobs, as designers, using social media, can you give an example of what those opportunities might be? I mean, do studios or other designers contact you to do collaborations, or do you use it as for your portfolio? What are some examples of these opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I might be slightly different because I've leaned quite heavily into like this YouTube sphere of
Mhm.
content creation as well. So I'm more than happy to collaborate with a brand and make a video about it. And I get that that is not designing. And what I never want to be is like someone who has a YouTube channel that talks about design. I want to be a designer that has a YouTube channel. That's a conscious decision. But yeah, I straddle the two quite a lot. One like I think that I actually got employed at Leia. Um, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but I'll say it anyway. Um, they make you do design tasks, which is that's a big debate in itself anyway. But none of the design tasks that I did were good enough. As with all design tasks, you have to do them on top of your current job. You have to do them, a couple of hours a day, maybe if that. So they're always going to be rushed. And I didn't do a very good job in my design uh, tasks. But the senior designer messaged me and say, "Hey, we saw that you've built an Eames lounge chair in SolidWorks and posted it to your Instagram. Do you enjoy building stuff like that and surface modeling?" Um, and then it started a conversation of like maybe going for a slightly different job that they were advertising for, but it was another way in. And I think that the fact that they'd seen previous stuff that wasn't necessarily a project that I had in my portfolio, but if you post something, you never know who's going to see it, which company director is going to see it. So post your best work and try and get it out there as much as you can.
What happens if your online presence is lacking and you're trying to make yourself stand out for these opportunities? What are some things you can do?
I get that. I am so lucky that I happened to download Instagram in like 2016, and just by chance that was like a good time to do it. So I understand that I'm extremely lucky to be in that situation. But I think that social media should always be about that social element, and it's about you put it, you get out as much as you put in. So it might not be about, and I feel like I've blinked, and there's like 1,000 design challenges on Instagram now, and it's like overwhelming. When I started, there was like one, maybe two, but it's about the connections that you make.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the numbers. It's not about being famous, whatever that means. Chat to people and make those connections. Like that's what it is at the core. And then as things progress, maybe do collaborations with other people, and then that's going to build up. I think that'll be a good way to do it.
Be a human first.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. It's a question that someone asked here. They want you to share your entire work process with Gantry. that might
Oh.
that might require another Lens session, or probably a YouTube video that you do on your own if you get permission to do that. But I would highly suggest you hit up Sam's website. I'm sure he has additional information on the work that he's done for Gantry. But for the time being and for the sake of time, we just want to make sure that we get to other questions. Someone here asked, how did you gather that much followers, supporters on Instagram as a designer? And I think you kind of already answered that. A lot of it is talking to people, being human, really taking the organic approach as opposed to the salesman approach of trying to hey, like this, like that, things like that. And I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you have anything? Are you excited about anything moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm at the start of like everything seemed to have changed at the start of this year, and then everything changed again. Like with everything that's going on, and I feel like I'm just starting to settle in to like layer stuff, settling in there, the gantry stuff. But even with my YouTube, when I get time to do that, I've been chatting to some people about content we can make on there. I'm going to build on what I have been doing already. Just excited to get back to like going for it right now.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think we should look at the silver lining in all of this. I know everyone's kind of going through 2020 as a very weird year, but find the areas of opportunity and really, take advantage of that. Here's a couple of questions, and we'll start wrapping things up. But here's a question How strict are designers in industry while efficient? Let me see. Can you? For some reason, this question cuts off. Are you able to see that? I think it's asked by
Uh,
Gotham.
is
Got,
that in the chat or in the Q&A?
and it was asked at 2:41 by how strict are designers in industry, and then it kind of cuts off for me for some reason. Well,
Oh, I
okay.
can see the whole thing here. I don't know if I understand it. So how strict are designers in industry while affinitizing data points for insights? Affinitizing? I don't know that word. But like to talk about the design insights and potentially what this question is about is like how strict is design it, like everything that I've shown, and when you're plotting stuff on the maps, on the semiotic maps, is like it's all subjective, because people's perception, the person doing the research is themselves experiencing life through their lens, and that's part of the whole point of why we do this semiotics stuff, and something that the XY graphs doesn't cover, right? So it's about interpretations and about checking that with other people as well.
Yeah, I think he was talking about grouping data points, or how much industry designers rely on data.
Well, I think that depends on whatever company. Like some companies are going to be more driven than others. Others have potentially one person at the front that just charges through, and others are going to analyze stuff as a team and do things based off the research. So I think it depends on the company ethos at the end of the day.
Here's a question by Alex, and he wants to know, how do you employ rendering and digital visualization into your own design process?
I am probably pretty guilty of jumping into Keyshot slightly too soon. I do the sketching and I want to jump in SolidWorks as fast as possible to see it and spin it, but then also go into Keyshot as fast as possible as well. But I do it in the sense of I want to see how natural light falls on this thing, and especially for the gantry lights, where especially with weight, I needed to see how light in different scenarios fell on the crease of the base. And with the pleats of the curtains in the new Encore light, you can't use SolidWorks standard lighting to get a sense of that. How far apart should they be? How wavy is it going to be? And sure, I could print those off on a 3D printer or whatever, but yeah, just to throw it into Keyshot really fast and just set up some lights. I do that as like a model making situation as well. So yeah, I'm just constantly back and forth between the whole thing.
Do you see yourself as an industrial designer for the rest of your life?
I don't know. Like, in that presentation, I said like, look beyond the next 2 years or so. But I don't know. I really enjoy making the videos and the content that I do, and going and covering events. I do really enjoy that. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that up for debate and see how that goes as well. But yeah, I'm enjoying like creating stuff, whether it's creating a physical product or creating videos and learning about that as well. Yeah, I'm all for creating.
Well, here's a $1 million question that's going to wrap up this whole interview. What kind of impact do you want to leave when you leave this world? What do you want to be known for?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, something that I toy with a lot, actually. I don't want. I mean, it would be amazing if I could make a design that has impact and helps and becomes well known and keeps my name going. In 100 years after I've gone, that would be amazing. yeah, but you know, there's always, I think there's always a romantic idea of design, and that is like what designers would love to do. But I also know some of the best designers that I know, like we need to remember that this is just a job. This is a day job. And some of the best designers I know turn up at 9 a.m., they do the work, they leave at 5 p.m., and they go and see their families. And like, it's a job, you know, it puts money on the table, and that's like noble in itself. So if by chance I get to make a design that lasts 500 years, great. If I can pay the bills and you know, enjoy life, then that's great too. You know, that's probably a really big answer for a big question. I hope that I just don't want it to be just the romanticized idea of design. You know.
And I don't think you have to have an answer for it now. I love asking that question because even if you don't have an answer now, it's good to start thinking about it so that you have your priorities in the right place and you have, you know, really good intentions, and you start to think about that moving forward as we all get older. Just being a good human and start to think about, hey, what kind of good impact can I have for the rest of society? So Sam, it was a pleasure to have you on Lens. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with you and everything you've done for us. We thank you. For those who have attended, I see a lot of familiar faces. Shout out to Roshan for joining us today and other amazing people that have joined us from around the globe. Like I said, there is an after Lens. Everyone should have received an email now. Join us there, and this video has been recorded and we'll upload it on YouTube, and we'll connect all of Sam's social media links onto that video. um, any last words, Sam?
Well, just thank you everybody so much for coming, and thank you to Land and Advanced Design, and thank you Hector for having me.
Sounds good. Have a wonderful Sunday, everyone, and we'll see everyone soon. Thank you. Bye, Sam.